The wacky world of MultimediaJay.
Howdy folks, well here's my snazzy wallpaper. It's really awesome what kind of 1080p images are showing up as wallpapers these days. So let's shut down Tuxedo here and let's do a little discussion of sorts after getting sworn at by the computer. If you don't know what I mean, you'll know in a second. As soon as Steam closes. Doo-da, doo-da, doo-da. How long can it take to close Steam?
My superior little pizza.
I recorded that back in high school. Fun stuff, fun stuff. Okay, shut off, you piece of junk. Alright, let's pull the plug on this and close that. Okay, so here's Tuxedo, right? Looking sleek as usual. What happened to this? I have to wipe down this case a little. Well, this is a pretty old case. It's got definitely several years on it at the very least. So, I'm in a bit of a pickle when it comes to computer hardware. The good news is that I've been hired on where I am. So finally, for the first time in years, I'm something besides a temp. Awesome! The bad news is, I was thinking, you know what, now that I actually have a decent job again, even though the pay is like middle of the road at best, I could do better as far as pay goes. I'm thinking, you know, let's at least try to do some computer upgrades. Unfortunately, I was in for a rather nasty surprise when I went looking for said computer upgrades. So here's Tuxedo, looking all snazzy as usual. This case is a little dated though. It's got a couple of years on it. It's basically, I've been using these kinds of cases for about 10 years or so. I originally first saw this kind of case on Alienwares back in the early 2000s, and I've known of at least 3 companies that have made a case with this design of some sort, that have passed this design around. The original Silver Bullet, which was the first computer I ever built back in college, was built in a Chief Tech version of this case. This is the Chen Ming version of this case, and there's a Pevia, I believe, had this case for a while, not too long ago. So, well, first and foremost, this thing has seen better days. For one thing, this door's broken, so it falls right off, but pretty decent system. These optical drives, interestingly enough, have actually lasted longer than other optical drives that I've had in systems over the years. Let's pull the plug, let's push the button a couple of times and stuff like that. So, the system's a pretty decent system as of 2010. I've had the case since many years ago, but the current iteration of hardware in this thing is from around 2010-ish or so. It's running off of an AMD Phenom X6 1090T Thuban processor, which was the best AMD regular CPU you could get before they switched over to APUs. 8 gigs of RAM, card reader replaced the floppy drive, 2 optical drives. It will run Blu-ray, but I haven't bothered with Blu-ray drives. Sound Blaster X-Fi Titanium for the sound, largely to encode it so it can go out to a home theater box. And of course, using the television as a monitor has worked out quite well for me over the last 5 years. I'm in a bit of a pickle though, because I went looking for computer upgrades for this thing, and it just, I don't know. For whatever reason, I guess processors haven't really advanced as much as they did the last time I went looking for parts. So, of course, well, let's just go over how this is set up. So here are some sleeve-bearing fans. I know I could probably do better fan-wise, but these are some Cooler Master sleeve-bearing fans. I actually have a video where I put these in a while back. This one's 140 millimeter, this is 120 millimeter. These serve as the intake fans for the system. They intake from the side because that's the where the components that get the hottest are located, namely the CPU and the GPU. See if I can do this without dropping the camera or causing the camera to screw up in some way, shape, or form. Can I do this with one hand? Okay, sort of. The answer, of course, is sort of. Trying to disconnect these things right here. I have these little extension cord thingies on these cables so that I can easily, nope, can't do it. Into the case it goes. I have these on here, of course, so I don't have to worry about snapping anything on the motherboard or disconnecting the fans or having to reach in with pliers to get these things to reconnect. So I direct intake, let's get the work light over here. So I direct intake to, oh cool, all the LEDs are working now. Had a couple of them that were out earlier. Got to resolder some of this to get them to work, to fix the intermittency in this thing. So we've got a Gigabyte motherboard running this thing. Not too enthused with Gigabyte motherboards. Probably not going to get another one. I only went with Gigabyte this go-around because I had really good luck with them last go-round. But I think I'm going to end up going back to Asus next time. So there's the Phenom with the stock cooler. I don't overclock either. I'm not really too big of a fan of voiding warranties or putting processors that I spent hundreds of dollars for on the line. Really shouldn't do these videos after supper. But yeah, I don't overclock or anything fancy like that. Usually, if you don't want to void the warranty, you're looking at like 1-2 year warranty or so, and then by the time you're looking at overclocking the thing, unless you want to void the warranty straight out, if overclocking even voids the warranty in the first place, if you want to void the warranty straight out, well, by the time the warranty's over, if you honor your warranty and you want to actually have a warranty on your processor, if you honor the darn thing, usually around the time you'd want to overclock, there's better chips out there anyways. Graphics, nothing exciting. A Radeon 6800. Matter of fact, this one specifically is a 6850 MSI with an aluminum heatsink. Boo! Copper's better than aluminum. Let's see here. RAM is, all the slots are filled up, 8 gigs of RAM. The thing can go up to 16, but I don't want to spend all that money for a 16 gig kit. SSD, and then for SSD for the OS, and then data storage is on 2 1TB drives that are not hooked up in any RAID array. I just use a sync program to copy from one to the other. Real simple backup, really. Fans are sleeve bearing. Of course, here's the fans with a nice little hologram on them that I put in a while back. They still run fine, but I think I could go a little quieter on the fans if I upgraded to something with a hydraulic or liquid bearing instead of a sleeve or a ball bearing. So I'm going to explain my dilemma in a bit, but for now, let's just talk a little bit more about how Tuxedo works nowadays. So you got stock cooling, air cooling, yay, cool, but because there's a big fan blowing air towards it, it kind of helps out this fan a little in terms of bringing cool air without having to spin up as much to blow air onto the CPU. Everything is powered by a Silencer Mark II from PC Power and Cooling, 750 watt, which could probably easily support 2 graphics cards without hiccuping too much. 2 optical drives, and basically is a standard setup that I've been using for many years with these computers. Decent sized tower. A decent sized tower with some data drives, a system drive, which on this one was an SSD, and stuff like that. Now I have a slightly unorthodox cooling setup with the intakes coming in from the side instead of the front, because that's only an 80mm fan right there. So I'd have a higher pitched, whinier fan in the front making noise when I could have lower pitched, bigger fans pulling the air directly in from the side. And because I'm usually on the other side of this case, it's the side that I'm not on. So that helps with the noise even more. I am keeping an eye out, though. I do have a Fractal Designs case totally as the next case I'm going to get. I've got that one, shall we say, earmarked or whatever, as the next case for me to get that runs completely off of 140mm fans. So let's talk a bit about this Phenom 2 processor that has done quite well for me over the years. First, I'm very happy that I don't have to blow air underneath there in order to clean those fins out. I used to have a problem on one of the previous systems that I had with air getting stuck between the heatsink fan's fan and the fins of the heatsink. But this has been a lot easier to take care of than that thing was. So thumbs up for that, definitely. Probably not going with a Gigabyte motherboard again next time, because this board has given me some stability issues. Sometimes one of the RAM sockets flakes out and I get a postcode when I start the thing up, and reseating the RAM fixes the problem. But I've had better luck with Asus motherboards over the years. So I'm looking at potentially, if I wanted to replace a CPU in this thing, I would get probably an AMD FX 8350 with an Asus Sabertooth. That classic combination that, from what I hear, is pretty much the build for AMD systems these days. However, I'm running into a bit of an issue. This processor, despite having a couple of years on it, is still a pretty decent processor. It's still a pretty decent processor. Processing is kind of stagnated a little. Processor advancement is kind of stagnated a little. Processors have advanced more in terms of having integrated graphics and stuff like that than just raw speed. So I'm actually still finding articles out there that are comparing this processor to something newer like an 8350. It's crazy. I mean, the latest one that I saw was dated October of last year, where someone was comparing this 1090Ti from 5 years ago almost to an 8350. Now, of course, there's Intel, Haswell, and Ivy Bridge, which usually do better performance-wise than AMD these days. They just cost notably more. They cost notably more, and the Haswells kind of run a little hot compared to their Ivy Bridge predecessors. Plus, I've been hearing about how AMD was finally going to release the chip that would allow them to catch up to, or actually give Intel some real competition again for the first time in quite some time. But I keep hearing that it's coming out, and it's coming out, and it's coming out, and I never actually see it come out. So, yeah, what to do? I'm a bit torn on whether I should replace this system with something newer, maybe grab some parts from this one to run the new one, or just upgrade this one. It really depends on what kind of performance increase I'm looking at, if it's significant enough, going from a 1090Ti to an FX 8350. That's really the go-to chip. That's the go-to chip I've got my eye on right now. It's basically a big bang-for-buck chip these days. So yeah, quite a pickle actually. But the big reason, it's not that this computer is really all that bad. I could probably just upgrade the graphics card and do quite well with gaming for another year or two with this thing. It's just that there's some other things going on too, especially with the whole Windows XP going end-of-life thing. Speaking of which, here's piano, still running A-OK. Can turn the thing on, and it will start right up very, very quickly because it's still running that fresh boot of that fresh image of Windows XP. Not bad for a system with a mechanical hard drive. 2 gigs of RAM. So in order to this thing comes up short for a comfortable amount of RAM in order to upgrade it to Windows 7. I know that I can run Windows 7 with 2 gigs of RAM. It's just not going to run all that well. I've used Windows 7 on systems roughly this age with 2 gigs of RAM at work, and it hasn't been a very pleasant experience. Windows 7, the comfortable RAM range just really starts at 4 gigs. Now, I know this thing can support 4 gigs, but here's the issue. We're looking at sinking money into this thing. If that's the case. Yes, I'm still using PlayStation 1 startup sounds as my computer startup sounds on my systems. I don't know. I actually kind of like that sound. You know, I never had a PS1 back in the day, but I actually do kind of like the startup sound. Avast is out of date. So it's actually working quite well. Of course, we can shut the whole thing off now. So it's really too bad. You know, Windows XP is still Windows XP is still very, very usable, but unfortunately, it's just old, and that's another discussion entirely. I've gotten into a few nerd debates with some people about Windows XP going end of life on Tuesday. So, yeah, it's really a bit of a pickle for me. So here's the situation. Now, I am looking at least getting another copy of Windows 7 so I can have the music system and the main system again. But here's the issue. Should I upgrade the RAM in this thing? Or should I take parts from this and Tuxedo and have a new system with Tuxedo as the new music station, and this goes and becomes something else? Because this is the original hardware from Tuxedo in this thing. Core 2 Duo E6750 from several years ago, still a perfectly fine system. It would just need a RAM upgrade to run Windows 7 comfortably. So, yeah, it's just a real pickle that I have to even wonder about this stuff in the first place. Of course, those drives, it's probably time to get rid of these drives, because these drives, the belts are shot in them. They don't open half the time because they get kind of jammed up. But here's the issue. Where to spend the money? Should I go to all the trouble to build a new system? Should I upgrade Tuxedo? Should I upgrade this one? What a mess. So this right here is the real pickle that I'm in with this whole processor thing. Here is a comparison article, AMD Phenom 1090Ti versus FX 8350. Scores, bar graphs, things like that, performance, overclocking, and some of these things, CPU boss score and stuff like that. A lot of these benchmarks are indicating that this processor would be kind of a modest improvement over what I already have. And check the date on this article. Let's see if you can find it up here. Release date? No, that's the release dates for the processors. Let's go down to the bottom, maybe. Let's see here. You have to go back to the Google results here. Let's go back to those Google results. See, October 19th, 2013 on CPUBoss.com. Now, I don't know if this is a generated website of some sort. I don't know if this is a generated website that you just type in like CPUs and it generates results like this and makes articles out of thin air and like that in order to compare numbers like this. But yeah, it's disturbing. You know, do I really want to replace this thing if it's still a decent processor compared to its successors over here in the FX line? There's also some other issues with the case that I've got. Let's go to the case on Newegg that I've been thinking of using for my next system and go over some of the issues over there too. Hey, Newegg banner. How'd you know I was about to head there? Oh, it's showing cases. That couldn't possibly be because I've been looking at cases on Newegg for quite some time. So this fractal design case is the one I'm keeping an eye on as the case I'm probably going to end up using for my next system, but I'm not too thrilled with some of the things that go into cases these days. I don't know if the overclocking crowd is ruining cases or stuff like that, but some of these changes I find just a tad questionable, like these dust sucker cases that have the power supply on the bottom, so unless you have a dust filter there, it'll just suck up all the dust that collects underneath your computer and just load the machine up with whatever settles underneath your computer. Or heck, maybe there's some people out there that have one of these things sitting on the floor. So it's a really nice case otherwise. I really like that the drive base can be rotated 90 degrees, so if I don't have a huge video card, I can rotate the drives to get better airflow, or just rotate to begin with and put everything in the bottom bay. So I can put turn the bottom bay sideways for better airflow and stuff like that. Now this would be a little different because there's no way to have any intake fans on there. Look at that, see, it's all just glass, just a window. There's no way to have any intake fans on the side, so I would have to make use of the 240 millimeter fans that can go in the front, although I like that this whole case runs off of 140 millimeter fans. There is one major thing that bugs the living daylights out of me though, and that is that the top is mesh. Now, I know why these cases are doing this. They're doing this to help the heat escape better. And so you can put some exhaust fans in the top. But every time I see a case like this, I always got to wonder, what if your roof leaks? You know, could your roof leaking wind up with you having a fried computer? So it's decisions. Otherwise, though, it looks like a pretty nice case. Probably one that I really like. Looks like it's got some more room to mess around with stuff. There's dedicated stuff for the SSDs in the back. I could drop my drive array into the bottom cage, have the video card up here, turn that sideways for better airflow into the case towards those, or turn them both sideways because I could put where the drives jut out down here and the motherboard's up there, find a way to get it to fit that way. Lots and lots of things that I can do here, and it's just really looking interesting. However, do I really want to go to all the trouble to build another system and have Tuxedo become the new music computer and then have to figure out what to do with some of these other systems that I have sitting around? Yeah, decisions. Plus, I've tossed around the idea, I mean, you can hear Tuxedo right now making a little bit of noise. It's not anywhere near the loudest computer I've ever had, but the fans are all sleeve bearing. I'll bet I could get better, I could probably get this system to be a lot quieter if I replace the sleeve bearing fans with hydraulic bearing fans or some liquid bearing fans. However, then we have to wonder about, this case runs off of mostly 140 mil fans. Meanwhile, this thing runs off of mostly 120 mil fans. So, decisions, man. It's just, if anyone's got any input, please, I'd really love to get some input on this whole thing because it's what do I want to spend where? I've got seasonal expenses coming up for insurance and other stuff like that, and of course getting the snow tires off the car because it might finally be spring for once, but it looks like perhaps it's time to get rid of Tuxedo. Pardon the loud redneck mobile you can probably hear in the background now. Not everybody around here has a decent muffler. Yeah! So, this isn't a bad system. Not even close. If I wanted to be really cheap about it, I could just upgrade the graphics card and probably see a sizable improvement to my games. What to do. There I go with the hiccups again. Alright, suppers kind of disagree with me here, so till next time, this is Multimedia Jay, signing off. Thanks for stopping by.